Gabriella Grant had exactly 3 minutes to catch the last bus home. And of course, that's when the skies exploded. The sound of thunder cracked as she sprinted across the sidewalk, rain soaking her wool coat and flattening her curls against her face. She skidded to a stop at the corner of 5th and Maple just in time to watch the bus drive off, taillights disappearing into the storm like a cruel joke. "Seriously?" she muttered, chest heaving as water dripped from her nose. She stood there, shivering, soaked, and utterly defeated. Her canvas tote sagged with the weight of soaked sketchbooks and ruined receipts. Her thrifted boots squelched when she shifted on the curb. She looked up at the sky like it had personally offended her. "Perfect," she breathed. A black SUV pulled up beside her. Not the kind of SUV you saw every day. This one gleamed even in the rain, tires whispering against the wet pavement. The window rolled down slowly and a man leaned over from the driver's seat. "Need a ride?" His voice was deep, smooth, and way too calm for this weather. Gabriella blinked. The man was handsome, unfairly so. Dark hair, strong jaw, a day's worth of stubble, green eyes that practically glowed even in the storm. He wore a gray button-up, sleeves rolled, and a watch Gabriella instinctively knew cost more than her monthly rent. "I'm not getting in a car with a stranger," she said, wrapping her arms tight around herself. "I get that," he said easily. "But the buses are done for the night, and you're freezing. I can drop you somewhere nearby. Literally just tell me where." She hesitated, teeth chattering. "I swear I'm not a serial killer. Or a creep. Or even slightly weird," he added, one side of his mouth lifting in a way that was, unfortunately, kind of charming. "I don't even know your name." He nodded. "Fair. Name's Kellan Vance." She frowned. "Like Vance Tech." He hesitated for half a second before nodding. "Yeah." Gabriella narrowed her eyes, stepping closer to the car. "You're telling me you're Kellan Vance? As in the guy who owns half the tech startups in the city?" "I don't own half," he said, amused. "Just a few. Look, you can Google me while we drive. Or call someone and stay on the line. But if you don't get in, you're going to catch pneumonia." She hesitated, heart thudding. Every instinct screamed no, but her soaked body and the cold said yes. And he didn't look dangerous. If anything, he looked annoyingly trustworthy. "Fine," she muttered, yanking open the door and sliding in. The heat inside the car hit her like a wave, and she exhaled sharply. "Seat warmers," he said with a satisfied nod. "You're welcome." She sank into the leather seat, trying not to notice how good it smelled in here. Like cedar and something expensive. "I'm Gabriella," she offered. "Nice to meet you, Gabriella. Want me to drop you at home?" She hesitated. Her apartment was a mess, barely heated, and currently had a broken elevator. "Can you just take me somewhere dry? A diner or something?" "Sure," he said, already pulling away from the curb. "There's a 24-hour cafe about 10 minutes from here. They make a killer grilled cheese." She glanced at him. "You eat grilled cheese?" "Every Tuesday night." "Why Tuesday?" He shrugged. "Feels like the most disappointing day of the week." She huffed a surprised laugh. "You're weird." "Told you I wasn't," he said, grinning now. The quiet in the car was oddly comfortable. He didn't ask invasive questions or try to make small talk. He just drove, occasionally glancing at her like he couldn't quite figure her out. She was still soaked, hugging her tote against her chest, trying to keep her knees from knocking with cold. 10 minutes later, they pulled up in front of a sleek cafe with golden lights spilling onto the sidewalk. Gabriella stared out the window. "That place looks expensive." "It's not. Promise." "Well, okay, the coffee's overpriced, but I'll cover it." "I didn't say I needed you to pay for me. I didn't say you did. I'm offering." She shot him a look. "You always offer strangers rides and grilled cheese? Only the ones who look like they're about to punch the rain in the face." She snorted before she could stop herself. Inside the cafe, it was warm and buzzing with soft jazz. Kellan ordered for both of them before she could argue, and within minutes they were sitting in a booth with 2 steaming mugs of cocoa and plates of oozy grilled cheese sandwiches. Gabriella took a bite and moaned softly. Okay, this is actually wow. Told you. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the storm still beating against the windows. Gabriella glanced at him, really looked this time. He was calm, self-assured, but not in an arrogant way. There was something quiet about him, like he didn't need to prove anything. So, is this the part where you tell me you live in a glass penthouse and own your own jet? He raised an eyebrow. Would it make you uncomfortable if I did? She shrugged. I mean, I already sat in your spaceship of a car and ate your grilled cheese. Might as well get the full billionaire experience. He laughed, really laughed, and she realized she liked the sound of it. Okay, fine. I live in a penthouse. No jet, though. Just the occasional charter. She blinked. So you're actually... You. I told you I was. She stared at him. Why were you driving around in the rain? I needed to clear my head. It's been a long week. She tilted her head. Let me guess. Rich people problems? Something like that, he said, but there was a shadow in his eyes now. Gabriella leaned back. Well, thanks for the ride. And the food. You didn't have to do that. I know. But I wanted to. There was a beat of silence. Do you want me to drive you home? She hesitated. No. It's late. I can Uber. I'll wait until you get it. She looked at him. Why are you being so nice? He shrugged. Why are you assuming there's a catch? She didn't have an answer to that. After she ordered her ride, they walked outside together. The rain had slowed, but the streets were still slick and shining under the streetlights. Her car pulled up. Thanks again, Kellan, she said, tugging her coat tighter. This was, weirdly, not the worst night of my life. That's a glowing review, he said with a half smile. She hesitated, then reached up and kissed his cheek. Just a quick, grateful press. He went still. See you around, she said. I hope so. She slid into the car and didn't look back, heart hammering in her chest. Kellan stood in the rain, watching her drive away, the ghost of a smile still on his face. He had no idea why he'd stopped for her. But something about Gabriella Grant had shifted something in him. And he wasn't letting that go. Gabriella didn't expect to see him again. People like Kellan Vance didn't circle back. They swept in, made a moment feel like a movie scene, and vanished into the skyline. But 3 days later, he walked into the gallery where she worked, rain-free, sunlit, and wearing a navy suit that looked like it had been tailored for a man with secrets. She was halfway through rearranging a sculpture display when she looked up and nearly dropped a ceramic bust. You followed me, she said, heart hiccuping in her chest. I remembered you said you worked at a gallery on Pine Tree, Kellan said, scanning the room like he was trying to memorize every line and shadow. There are exactly 2 galleries here. The first one had a mural of a unicorn in the lobby. I assumed that wasn't your kind of vibe. Gabriella stared at him. That's mildly impressive and borderline creepy. He smiled, but it was quieter this time. I wanted to see you again. Figured I'd take my chances. You're not really the type who takes chances. You seem like the type worth making exceptions for. She crossed her arms. And what exactly do you want, Kellan? He glanced at the sculpture beside her, a twisted metal piece she'd spent weeks convincing the curator to approve. I want to know how someone who curates pieces like this ends up running errands and catching buses after dark. Gabriella's jaw tightened. Because passion doesn't pay rent. And I'm not interested in being a charity case. I didn't offer charity. I offered company. She didn't reply. If he noticed her hesitation, he didn't press. Instead, he walked further into the gallery, pausing in front of a painting that looked like a storm trapped in oil, dark and furious, with streaks of crimson. Gabriella watched him, arms still crossed, trying not to notice the way he moved. I bought this one, he said. She blinked. Excuse me? Auction? 6 months ago. It's hanging in my dining room. Looks different here. That's because the lighting's decent and you're not distracted by whatever wine you serve at your parties. He turned, and this time his expression was unreadable. I don't throw many parties. Right, she said slowly. Just the quiet, brooding type with art auction hobbies. You're harder to read than I expected, Kellan said, stepping closer. Good. I like that. Too bad I'm not here to be liked. That earned a low laugh from him. Then what are you here for? To work. And survive. Not flirt with men in suits who randomly reappear. Randomly? He echoed. I thought I was being deliberate. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. I have a delivery to pick up, she said. If you're here to buy another painting, I can get someone else to help you. I'm here for you, Gabriella. You barely know me. Then let me. She stared at him, then exhaled sharply. Fine. You want something real? Take me somewhere that doesn't have white tablecloths or valet parking. His brow lifted. Are you challenging me? I'm seeing if you can handle anything outside your bubble. Pick the time. Tonight. A corner of Ambrose and Lark. I'll be there. She walked past him without another word, but her pulse thundered in her ears. At exactly 8, she found him waiting by the food truck with 2 paper trays in hand and a leather jacket over his shoulders. You're early, she said. You're late, he replied. By 3 minutes. I was counting. She took the tray from him and eyed the contents. You brought tacos? For choices. I picked the 2 with the longest lines. They sat on a low stone wall near the sidewalk, steam rising from the food. So, Gabriella said, between bites, what's the real story? You can't be just a tech guy with a tragic backstory and a perfectly tailored wardrobe. My backstory's not tragic. It's just inconvenient. I'm listening. He wiped his hands with a napkin. My father built the foundation of Vance Tech. I inherited it when I was 28. He died suddenly. People expected me to fail. Did you? Not yet. And your mother? Left when I was 10. No postcards. No explanations. Gabriella didn't speak for a moment. That's rough. It was quiet. Not the same thing. She tilted her head, studying him under the amber glow of a street lamp. Why tell me this? Because I don't want to be a stranger the next time we talk. That assumes there's a next time. I'm counting on it. She finished her taco and stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. Don't think knowing a few things about me means you've figured me out. I don't want to figure you out in one night. What do you want? Time. With you. Gabriella stared at him, waiting for the twist, the catch, the hidden game. But he just stood there, watching her like she was the only clear thing in a city of noise. I'll walk you home, he said when she didn't answer. You don't even know where I live. Then I'll walk until you tell me to stop. She started walking. He followed. They didn't talk much. Just the sound of their footsteps on pavement and the occasional laugh when she pointed out the worst graffiti in her neighborhood. When they reached her building, she stopped. This is me. Kellan looked up at the flickering porch light, then back at her. No elevator? Broken. He hesitated. Come out with me Saturday. To where? Somewhere you don't expect. I don't like surprises. You'll like this one. She eyed him warily. You're persistent. Only when it matters. Gabriella stepped back toward the door. If I say yes, you better not show up in anything ironed. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. Deal. She didn't kiss him. Didn't touch him. But she left him standing there. And for reasons she didn't fully understand, that felt more intimate than anything else. The invitation arrived not as a text or a call, but as a knock on Gabriella's apartment door precisely at 6 on Saturday evening. When she opened it, Kellan stood there with a brown paper bag in one hand and a motorcycle helmet in the other. You said no ironed clothes, he said simply. He wore a black t-shirt, faded jeans, and boots that had clearly seen actual road. The helmet dangled from his fingers. You brought a motorcycle? Gabriella looked past him, spotting the sleek silver machine parked by the curb. You didn't think to ask if I've ever been on one? I assumed you'd tell me if you weren't game. I brought a second helmet either way. Where are we going? You'll see. I told you I don't like surprises. I remember. But I also remember you didn't say no. She eyed the helmet warily, then stepped back inside and grabbed her coat. No speeding. No promises. They rode out of the city, the streets giving way to empty roads and open fields. Gabriella held tight, her arms around his waist, the wind pulling at her coat as the hum of the engine filled the space where conversation couldn't. After nearly an hour, the bike slowed in front of a long gravel drive lit by low lanterns. At the end stood a building made of weathered brick and steel beams, its windows glowing warm against the twilight. A small, hand-painted sign read, "The Foundry." Kellan helped her off the bike. "What is this place?" "You'll see." He led her inside where the scent of turpentine and iron hung in the air. The interior was cavernous, with high ceilings and massive windows. Sculptures, all unfinished or in progress, filled the space. Welding torches, pottery wheels, and canvases lined the walls. A few artists worked quietly under hanging lights, each focused on their own messy, beautiful chaos. Gabriella turned in a slow circle. "This is an active studio." "It's a collective I sponsor," Kellan said, watching her reaction. "They get the space, materials, and time. No commissions. No deadlines." She turned to him. "You fund this. It's not public. I don't advertise it. Why bring me here?" "Because you're the only person I've met who'd understand why it matters." A woman in paint-streaked overalls walked by, nodding at Kellan before disappearing behind a curtain. Gabriella moved toward a sculpture made of shattered glass and steel rods, sharp and delicate all at once. She reached out, then pulled back. "You can touch it," a voice said from behind. A man with a beard and ink-stained hands stepped forward. "It's mine. You're not going to break it." She barely brushed it with her fingers. "It's beautiful. Thanks." "Vance said you were an artist, right?" Gabriella blinked at him, then looked back at Kellan. "You told them about me?" "I said you curate and create. That's all." The artist nodded. "We've got a wheel open if you want to try something." Gabriella laughed under her breath. "I haven't thrown clay since college." "Doesn't matter," the man said. "Hands remember." She hesitated, then looked at Kellan. "You planned this." "I hoped for it." An hour later, she was elbow-deep in clay, her coat discarded, sleeves rolled up. Kellan stood nearby, watching as she shaped the spinning mass on the wheel into something uneven but undeniably hers. "You're too quiet," she said without looking up. "Say something." "I'm memorizing." She looked at him, eyes narrowing. "Memorizing what?" "You like working with your hands. You press your tongue to the side of your mouth when you concentrate. And you don't flinch at mess." "I'm not afraid of dirt." "I know." She turned back to the wheel. "This place is incredible. It's the only thing I've ever done that feels unselfish." "Why hide it?" "Because people think everything I touch is a business move. Here I can just give. No headlines. No manipulation." Gabriella stood, wiping her hands with a towel. "You ever work here?" "I tried once. It was awful." She laughed. "You kept it anyway." "I liked failing at something that didn't matter." She stepped closer, holding her clay-covered hands away from her clothes. "You're not what I expected." "I hope not." They left an hour later, the stars bright above the tree line. Gabriella balanced the lopsided bowl she'd made in one hand. "I'll fire it for you," Kellan said as they reached the bike. "You can pick it up next week. I'll hold you to that." He handed her the helmet, then paused. "There's something I want to ask." She looked up. "Go ahead." "I want you to come with me to a gala next Friday." Gabriella blinked. "A gala?" "It's a foundation event. I'm on the board. It's black tie, catered, and full of people who smile too much." "Why would you want me there?" "Because I'd rather survive it with someone real." She hesitated. "If I say yes, I need time to find something to wear." "You don't." "I've already arranged it." She raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "I asked the studio's coordinator for your size. She didn't give it to me, but she said you'd kill me if I assumed wrong." "Smart woman." "I sent a personal shopper to your building earlier today. There's a garment bag hanging on your door." Gabriella stared at him. "You're serious?" "I've never been more." She didn't answer, just climbed onto the bike, clutching the bowl in one hand and the helmet in the other. As they sped back through the night, Gabriella leaned into him, the wind colder now, but her chest warmer. She didn't know what this was. But it was becoming harder and harder to pretend it wasn't real. The moment Gabriella stepped into the ballroom, she understood why Kellan had insisted on the dress. It wasn't just elegant, it was armor. Midnight blue silk with an asymmetrical neckline, fitted at the waist, the fabric catching the light with every step. She had never worn anything like it. It didn't belong to her world, and yet tonight it did. Chandeliers glimmered above her like suspended galaxies, casting golden light onto marble floors and a sea of sequined gowns and tailored tuxedos. Waiters glided past with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres she couldn't pronounce. Kellan met her at the entrance. She didn't even get a chance to speak before he offered his arm. "You look like you could own this room," he said without blinking. "I feel like I borrowed it from someone braver," she replied. "Then let me be brave for both of us." He guided her through the crowd, his fingers brushing hers just enough for her pulse to catch. Heads turned as they passed, but he didn't flinch from the attention. He didn't introduce her as his guest. He didn't introduce her at all. He just walked beside her like she belonged there. And somehow she started to believe she did. They paused beside a large display with the foundation's name etched in crystal. A silver-haired man approached, holding a flute of champagne and wearing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Kellan," the man said, extending a hand. "Glad you made it. And you brought." "This is Gabriella Grant," Kellan said evenly. "She's an artist and curator." "Gabriella, this is Samuel Langford. He chairs the foundation." Langford's gaze flickered over her with the clinical interest of someone who collected people like sculptures. "Lovely," he said. "You're with the Grant family in Boston?" Gabriella shook her head. "No relation. My family's from Newark." Langford smiled a little too tightly, then turned back to Kellan. "We'll be calling you up in about 15 minutes. You've got the big slot before the announcement." Gabriella turned to Kellan as Langford moved on. "You're speaking." "I am. You didn't tell me that." "I wasn't sure I wanted to." She frowned. "Why not?" "Because what I'm about to say changes everything." He didn't explain. Instead, he led her to a table near the stage and pulled out her chair without ceremony. The program began, and Gabriella sat through speeches about grants and innovation, her eyes drifting to Kellan, who sat straight-backed, hands folded in his lap, calm on the outside, but his foot tapped beneath the table just once. When his name was called, he stood, adjusted his cufflink, and looked down at her. "Wish me luck," he said. "You don't need it," she replied softly. He climbed the steps, took the microphone, and waited. The room fell silent, not out of courtesy, but out of expectation. Everyone wanted something from him. A donation, a partnership, a headline. But what he gave them was not what they expected. "My father built the foundation of this company," he began. "And for a long time I thought success meant proving I could carry it without him. I thought it meant never letting anyone see where I was uncertain, or afraid, or human." The audience shifted. A few leaned in. "But something changed this year. I met someone who reminded me that connection isn't a weakness. That building something real, something lasting, has nothing to do with image, and everything to do with truth." Gabriella's heart thudded once, hard. He continued, "So tonight, I'm not announcing a new acquisition or expansion. I'm announcing a shift. Vance Tech will be opening a permanent grant for independent creators, artists, sculptors, designers with no strings attached. No equity. No PR requirements. Just freedom." There was a beat of stunned silence, then a ripple of applause. Kellan didn't wait for it to swell. He stepped back from the mic and returned to the table. Gabriella looked at him, stunned. "You didn't have to do that." "I know. You said it was something that would change everything. It already has." He didn't touch her, didn't lean in, but his eyes were steady. "Sure." Later, as the crowd began to disperse and the orchestra shifted to softer tones, Kellan led her out onto the terrace. The skyline glowed behind them, and the air was cool, sweet with distant lilac from the rooftop garden. "I didn't bring you here to dazzle you," he said quietly. Gabriella turned to him. "Then why did you?" Because I wanted you to see the whole picture. Not just the studio, or the suit, but all of it. The parts that don't always make sense together. And what if I still don't understand all of it? He stepped closer. Then I'll spend however long it takes helping you. Her breath caught. You make me want things I stopped believing I could have, he said. Not because of what you do, but how you see the world. How you see me. She reached up, fingers brushing his collar. You never asked me what I want. I'm asking now. Gabriella didn't answer right away. She looked out over the city, the sound of music drifting from behind them. Then she turned back, steady. I want something honest. Messy. Beautiful. And real. Kellan didn't hesitate. He cupped her face, leaned in, and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss meant for attention. It wasn't about the glittering city or the people behind them or proving anything. It was quiet. Certain. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I missed a bus 3 weeks ago, she whispered. And now I'm here. In this dress. With you. I'm glad you did, he said. Because I think I was waiting at that corner long before you ever showed up. They left the gala early, hand in hand, shoes in her other hand, heels clicking against the sidewalk as they walked through the city like it belonged to them. And when they reached her building, he didn't ask to come up. He just kissed her again, slower this time, and said, Tell me when you're ready for forever. She smiled. I think I already am. 1 month later, they stood in the studio where she'd first thrown clay with him, surrounded by artists and friends, laughter echoing through the high ceilings. She wore a white sundress and bare feet. He wore a rolled-up shirt and paint on his forearm. They said their vows between sculptures and sunbeams. And in a quiet corner of the room sat a crooked ceramic bowl. Perfectly imperfect. Just like them. The day the gallery called, Gabriella was in the middle of painting the front door to her new studio. She stood barefoot on the concrete, brush in hand, sunlight pooling across her shoulders. The smell of fresh paint mingled with the lavender she'd planted outside the entrance. It wasn't much, just a converted warehouse space on the edge of the city, but it was hers. Funded by her own merit, her own vision, and admittedly the grant she'd applied for under a pseudonym. Kellan didn't know she'd used it. Not yet. She answered the call with a paint-streaked knuckle pressed against her phone. Gabriella Grant, came the crisp voice on the other end. Your proposal for the Intersections exhibit has been selected as our lead feature. She froze, the paintbrush slipping from her hand and hitting the ground with a soft thud. You're serious? She asked, her voice hoarse. There's no one else we even considered. The caller said simply before confirming the opening date. You'll have full use of the main wing. We'd like to include your written statement in the feature brochure. After she hung up, she just stood there, staring at the open sky. Later that night, she padded barefoot into the kitchen of the penthouse where she'd slowly, quietly begun spending more nights than not. Kellan leaned against the counter, sleeves pushed up, flipping through a folder of architectural renderings. She didn't say anything, just walked up to him and slid her arms around his waist. That good of a day? He asked, setting the folder aside. They chose me, she said against his chest. They picked my work to headline the exhibit. He didn't ask which gallery or what the theme was. He just kissed the top of her head and whispered, Of course they did. I didn't use my name. I didn't want anyone to think I got it because of you. Kellan pulled back slightly, his brow lifting. You don't ever need to explain that to me. You earned it. You always do. She swallowed hard. I want to feature the piece I made at the foundry. The first one. Even if it's crooked. That bowl's the reason I fell in love with you, you know? She looked up at him, startled. You never told me that. I didn't know it until now. His voice was quiet. But thinking back, yeah, that was it. You made something imperfect and still gave it your whole heart. That's when I knew I wanted to build a life with you. Gabriella pulled him closer, heart aching in the best way. You already have. 2 weeks later, she stood in the center of the gallery's main wing, surrounded by her work. Sculptures, mixed mediums, installations, each piece a collision of texture and emotion. At the far end of the room sat the bowl. still misshapen, still glazed unevenly, but now displayed on a pedestal under soft lighting. Kellan arrived just as the first wave of guests stepped in. He wore a deep charcoal suit, no tie, a paint stain near the hem of his shirt she suspected was intentional. He didn't make a speech. He didn't draw attention. Instead, he found her hand and laced their fingers together. "You're glowing," he whispered. "I think that's just gallery lighting," she murmured back. "No, it's you. You're different now." "I don't feel different. You don't carry the weight of proving yourself anymore. You just are." They stayed until the end of the night, speaking with patrons, answering questions, and watching as people wandered to the bowl and stood in quiet contemplation. One woman asked Gabriella why she'd included something so rough in an otherwise polished collection. "Because it's the first thing I made after I stopped trying to be perfect," she said simply. After the exhibit closed, they walked home together through quiet streets, Gabriella's hair pinned up, her heels dangling from her fingers. "I never told you what I want next," she said. "I've been dying to know. I want to open a residency program for artists who don't have access. I want to expand the Foundry model, only this time with my name on it." He paused. "You want a partner in that?" "I already have one." He stopped walking. "You know, I've been carrying around something for a few weeks. I was going to wait until our anniversary, but now feels right." Gabriella turned to face him. "What is it?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "I don't have a speech," he said, "and I don't have a plan. I just know that I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to argue about paint colors and forget to take out the trash together. I want to build things with you, messy, beautiful, real things." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant, with a sapphire nestled between two tiny diamonds. "Marry me, Gabriella? Not because it's perfect, but because it's us." She didn't cry. She laughed hard and bright and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, yes, yes." They kissed under the streetlight, the city quiet around them, the ring cool against her skin. 3 months later, they married on the rooftop of their new studio space, surrounded by their work, their friends, and the lavender Gabriella had insisted on planting herself. There were no gowns, no tuxedos, just linen, laughter, and the smell of paint drying on canvas. They exchanged vows they wrote themselves. No promises of perfection, only the commitment to keep choosing each other in the chaos, the quiet, and everything in between. After the ceremony, they danced barefoot beneath strings of lights, the skyline watching like a silent witness. And when night fell and the last guest left, Gabriella leaned against Kellan's chest and whispered, "I'm not afraid of being seen anymore." He kissed her temple. "That's because you finally see yourself the way I always have." They watched the city lights flicker like stars, arms wrapped around each other, and said nothing more. They didn't need to. Everything that mattered was already theirs.